Hello, hi, it's Debs here. Debs de Vries on behalf of the Eden Room, and I am the midlife wisdom mama. Some people call me. I tend to call myself an alchemist, a midlife holistic mentor, and it's my absolute joy and delight to help midlife women, particularly those that are have an innate sense that there's more for them, not in a greedy way, but because they know there are more, and are feeling that their wheels are spinning at midlife. And why not? There are so many things that coalesce, that seem to come together at midlife to really slow us up. The topic that I want to address now is the topic of not enough. So, one of the first things I will hear when I'm in conversation with a woman who's feeling probably really compressed, that she just doesn't have enough. And the first thing is, I don't have enough time. Very often, the next thing is, I just don't have enough support. And then when we dig down, I'm not having enough fun. I'm not having enough sex. I'm just not having enough. And if that sounds like you, listen up. There are many, many ways to resolve this and create a much better feeling state and a much better feeling life for you without crashing and burning all the things you hold precious in your life. So, when we are experiencing a problem, it's unusual that it's just happened, right? There are circumstances, of course, where we suddenly are compressed, where things happen that we have to deal with and get through. But generally speaking, by the time I'm talking to a woman, she'll be in her mid 40s. And if you like, the problem has been accumulating and it just reaches a point, usually when perimenopause is getting a stronghold. So estrogen levels are dropping, libido is dropping, the need for rest is greater, but also at the same time, the demands of a growing family, the demands of their education, the demands of a partner, of planning holiday things, running a home. Running a business, for heaven's sake, that would be enough, wouldn't it? All of these things seem to mount up. And one of the first responses that we have is to do more, right? So we've been taught that in order to produce, we have to do more. So time immediately, which is finite, we all know the same thing, we've all got 24 hours a day, gets eaten up. And as time gets eaten up and we feel that we're running, but we're not getting anywhere, the internal pressures and exhaustion also build up. So that can impact our emotional state. We're less clear, we get more confused, we feel less able to function, and we are firefighting. Very often, we're just getting through the day. And that is not a good feeling, is it? Right. So the main problems I hear are, I haven't got enough time. I haven't got enough support and I'm not getting enough sex. I'm not getting enough fun. Or even, I'd love to have more sex, but I really haven't got time for it. Or I don't even really want it anymore. When I get to bed, I just want to sleep. So we're in a snowball. So, with anything that is beginning to overwhelm us or is overwhelming us, the most important thing to do is to pause and breathe and understand that there are ways forward. There are good ways forward, and they are going to require you to change. Because if you can't change, then the situation can't change, right? So they're going to, the ideas I'm going to suggest are going to ask you to relinquish some of the identities and the roles you're holding or aspects of them. And this is important because you're evolving, so you can't carry on being the same you, and because there are others around you who also need to step into roles and responsibilities in new ways as they're growing. But it's also important because this belief that pushes us to do more, really, to keep up, is a belief that stops us asking for help, or it has us ask for help in a way which isn't heard or sounds strident or naggy or ugly, or we don't understand how to do it in a way that just gets the job done so we're not monitoring, nagging, and staying micro managing. The belief that I'm not enough is actually the devil in the detail here. If fundamentally we don't think we're enough, we keep doing more so that we can prove that we are. And the net effect is that we end up burning out. So, if you're willing to make change, then I'm going to give you some of the things that I would always, always offer to my clients. So, the first one is I haven't got enough time, is to have a look and see what that really means. Where is your time going? Okay, I'm sure you could reel off, well, I take the kids to school, I do this, I do that. Right, okay. But you need to actually get your mind out of general, I haven't got enough time, and into specific, where is your time going? So when you can answer that, you can find better ways of getting stuff done. Um, so analyze that. You know, you've got a phone, we've all got phones. You can very easily just use your voice recorder and say, I've just spent 20 minutes doing such and such a thing. And it might sound over analytical, but it's going to help. And it is a question of stopping the train that's pushing you and having a look at what's going on. Analyze your time and see where it's going. The next thing to do is to decide which of the things you do genuinely have to be done by you, absolutely have to be. So if they absolutely have to be done by you, where are the things that don't have to be done by you? Because you're not going to get more time. You're going to have to apply a common sense rule which says, I can't do everything. And when you look at your time analysis, I want you to see how much time is going to you for another very important component, which is space, right? Head space and physical space. If that's not in there, it needs to go in there and something else is going to fall out. So I'm going to give you my 3D rule. When you've analyzed where your time's going, decide, do I do it? Who else could do it? And why don't I get that sorted? Because that could be a belief running there. Why don't I ask somebody else to do this and have it off my plate completely? Dump it. Is it that important? Is it really that important that it has to be done? So there are things on my dump list I never think about. Honestly, I haven't for 20 or 30 years until I started applying these techniques, which I brought with me from my executive training days into women's mentoring because many women weren't getting these great skills. Dump it. Dump it. See what happens if you don't iron for a couple of weeks. See what happens if you buy from Get Fresh or you skip a meal or you just don't do something. Because there's a fear that if I don't do this, and that's what you want to examine, what is holding you back from just dumping it? People that you really don't want to see, situations that drag you down, outings that you don't want to do, you've got to find energy for that. And if you're already in perimenopause, you're finding energy from a place which is actually trying to get you to protect your energy. So do it, dump it, or delegate it. Now, delegation doesn't mean telling somebody to do it, nagging them, and then complaining when it's not done the way you wanted it. Right? It's much deeper than that. And I actually have a beautiful little exercise that helps you and the family see all the things that need to be done in the family. And this is useful for children from the age of 7 or 8 onwards to sit around and listen, to understand who's doing what, and to actually properly delegate, which is to give responsibility for, you stay accountable, and training, and then you back off, you monitor, right? There is no nag, 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 nag. Look, I've done it. And I can tell you, I ate quite a lot of undercooked spaghetti. Bins didn't always go out on time. We had an outbreak of maggots in a waste paper basket where my son had left some chicken bones. But you know what? After he'd cleaned them up, he didn't do that again. And yes, I have been the tough love mama. But I've also freed up time and, more importantly, health giving energy for myself and created a family unit that worked as a unit and not with me as the martyred soul, provider, if you like, of all great things. So there were roles I had to give up. So do it, dump it, or delegate it. So you're going to analyze where your time's going, and you're going to make decisions, and you're going to make sure that you've got at least 30 minutes every day where you do nothing. You have space. 30 minutes is so minimal. So support. Who can you ask? If you're not asking them, why not? That's really important. And I don't hear because they'd say no. Because if that's absolutely true, are you asking in a way that helps them want to support you? Are you being vulnerable and explain to them how you really feel? Or is it somebody you could look for a joint solution with? I know most people have dishwashers, but I have suggested them to people and they're like, oh, I love to hand wash the dishes. Would you rather have a clean and tidy kitchen and sit down for half an hour? We have to really examine what, particularly in a society where we have access to so much, why we haven't got enough of the one finite and precious thing, time. Support from family. So going back to delegation, I use that exercise to help my family take on jobs and free me up. So I didn't even have to think about them. That's the point of delegation. Yes, you need to monitor. If something doesn't get done and you're accountable and it's paying a bill, then probably you should keep hold of that job, right? But there's so many things in the family that can be done. Most children I've met, if you get them early enough, particularly, enjoy being treated with that level of responsibility. They really don't want to grow up spoiled little pashas that don't lift a finger for themselves. They enjoy the autonomy of being able to cook, fetch themselves meals, put the bins out, walk the dog, do the lawns, vacuum, clean up after themselves without fail. These are not asking big things. We do them, everybody needs to do them. I wanted my children to go off to uni and not become dependent or codependent. That was really important to me. So look for support where you can. Now, sometimes we have to go outside of our family unit. It could be that you need support from a professional body of some kind. You might need support in your health challenges. You might need support from the Eden Room, a mentor like me, somebody who's completely on your side and completely neutral. So when I talk about space, I want to talk about headspace, which is actually you having time to sit quietly and do these things, and to protect your space. Protecting space is super important. So setting boundaries. Darling, I will talk to you in half an hour when I've done this. Until then, this is my time. There comes a time when your children are old enough to hear that and safe enough to be left. Obviously, until then, we have to deal with intrusion in the headspace. It's also important to know that setting boundaries with partners and in the same kind but firm way helps us to replenish and to be heard and to be seen as individual and not to be confused with the sort of general melee of life that we're always available, because we're not always available. And we need to follow our own internal cycles, our natural cycles, particularly for women of withdrawal. They are part of our cycle. They're not us being mean or moody. It's about a replenishment, a purification, and a re-strengthening and regeneration. So setting a precedent that you need time just to do nothing, and actually being okay with saying that, because very often we don't get time until we're too sick or too tired. I have to go to bed, I'm exhausted. I have to go to bed because I feel like I need a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that might be 30 minutes, and then I'm buzzing for the rest of the day. Find your own cycle. The other thing about space is your adrenals like it. Now, this isn't a topic that involves adrenals, but let's just remember that your ovaries and your adrenals are intimately connected. And in your midlife crisis time, your adrenals need to work as little as possible, right? Only for real stressful situations. And when we're overtired, that's a stress. When we're overpressured, that's a stress. So getting support is huge. Getting space so that you can decompress, you can deregulate your nervous system. And with any luck, you will go for a walk at least 20 minutes out and 20 minutes back every single day, not for weight loss or you'll get health benefits, but because it helps your adrenals to deregulate. Okay? They don't have an off switch. The whole purpose is to make sure they're on duty to keep you alive. And they actually calm down when there's no one around. They calm down when we're in nature, when we haven't got our ears listening, our brain busy, just in a kind of slightly not half awake, but just drifting along, looking at the sky, looking at the trees is a really helpful thing in terms of space. So if you get more support and you get more space and you take care of your adrenals and you protect them and you protect your space, your libido may well start to fire back up, okay? Because being tired is an absolute killer. I would suggest that having fun is a really good entry back into your sexual life. And sometimes men read our withdrawal as an abandonment of our sexual desire for them. I've given talks to men who've been pretty much literally cried on my shoulder afterwards and thought, she didn't fancy me anymore. They're feeling it too, and saying I'm constantly tired and not doing anything about it isn't helping either of you. So I'm talking to people who may be in a relationship, but equally, if you're single and you're not having sexual activity and you don't want it, remember to still have fun, because that is still part of your life force. Pick up on something that used to make you smile in the 20s. Could be clubbing, could be dancing, could be rollerblading, stand-up paddleboard. Learn something new. Make that a part of what you do every week. Right? As much as running the kids around, as much as taking care of, if you do the Sunday lunch or the outlaws or the this or the that, that's a priority. Going back to sexuality, our body can feel delicate and vulnerable at this time. And I often say to couples, have a talk around what else is sensual and erotic to you that isn't, I say, just intercourse, because that can be quite tiring, and you don't want to get overtired, but you want to feel loved, you want to feel erotic, you want to feel desirable. Lots of ways to tackle that. That's a topic on its own. But things that I've tried, things that I've done, things I've suggested to others include reading erotica to each other, watching erotica. Notice I'm making a definition here. For me, erotica is light, titillating, interesting, suggestive, but it's not hard. It's not, there's no element of pornography in it. It could be all kinds of things. It could be, playing a dating game together. It could be writing an erotic letter to each other. I know in my 50s, I got a real desire to write erotica, and I wrote a series of erotic stories that were actually commissioned and published. And then I didn't want to anymore. I sort of had this great, got to do it, got to get my erotic nature expressed. Kind of burnt out on that, but it was very entertaining. Talking about sex, talking about what you like and what you don't like without actually putting yourself in a situation to do it. All the things that perhaps have been more on the margins in the first half of our physical lives, I think it's a great time to start bringing those back. But with the framework that this is kind of to get your juices flowing again. It's not for an end game. It's not, we're going to do this, so I will definitely want intercourse, or so we will. And also listen to your partner and how they feel about that, because they can feel very rejected and very neglected. So what's it going to take for them? What could they do to support themselves? What could you do to support yourself in your sexuality? I'd like to do a big topic on that actually, but I am saying that sex and fun are interchangeable, or they should be in my book. And if you can start having fun with your partner, that can lead back to the boudoir much more easily than anything more contrived. So, going back to a basic premise of not enough is, remember, if you haven't asked, Is that because you're holding on to a role or an identity that actually masks the fact that you're not enough? Or if you let that go, you won't be needed, you won't be loved, you won't be wanted. These are very important things to look at. So, things you might not have enough of: space, support, sex, stroke fun. Okay, so it all starts with slowing everything down, understanding that absolutely is a way out. You have to get in the driver's seat and start some analysis. Yeah, we actually have to look at what we're doing and not just wander into it and let it drive us. When you've done some analysis, you're going to start to make decisions with a partner if that's necessary: what to do, what to dump, what to delegate. Contact Eden Room if you want my family delegation fun sheet. And it's a really important thing, I believe, to help bring the whole family on board with family life in a very broad way that prepares them for adult life. Definition of delegation, how to set the meeting up, how to make it interesting, how not to come across as demanding. All of these things are part of that particular exercise, and I'd love to share it with you. And then thinking about creating space for yourself, headspace, boundaries, physical space, protecting that space. So you're protecting your physical health and your adrenals. And then once you've got that in place, I would then suggest that going back and using that time that you've put into your schedule to prioritize fun and space will free up some energy to get you back. If that's where you want to go, you might not. You might just I wouldn't mind some time off. Let's just not think about this for a year. Have the conversation if there's somebody who needs to hear that it's not about you having an affair. I've heard men fear that, or just not fancying them anymore, that it's an actual shift in your hormones, but there are still ways that you want to feel erotic, and what's that going to look like? You want them to feel loved and erotic. What's that going to look like? Okay, lovely ones. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And all of us at the Eden Room are on standby anytime to help you out with any of this or other queries that you have from across our fabulous range of offering. So, from me, Debs de Vries, the Midlife Holistic Alchemist, I'm looking forward to hearing how you get on with being enough and having enough.